हेलो अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड वेलकम टू डीएसजी पावर आर वेबिनार सीरीज जहां पर हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान की एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन जर्नी। आई एम योर होस्ट अदील तारिक फ्रॉम डीएसजी एनर्जी। फॉर रिगार्डिंग दिस वेबिनार सीरीज, हम लोग इस वेबिनार सीरीज में अभी तक क्या क्या चीज़ें डिस्कस कर चुके हैं। स्टार्टिंग ऑन हम लोगों ने डिस्कस किया कि इस तरह की जो टॉक्स हैं इनकी क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है एंड हाउ दे आर शेपिंग the energy transition journey and how it is playing a role in awareness for our local people, for our industrialists, and for our commercial users of electricity in Pakistan. So, uh, आज का जो एपिसोड है इसको हम लोगों ने डिज़ाइन किया है इसी रिलायबिलिटी कंसर्न्स के ऊपर। जब भी हम पाकिस्तान की एनर्जी स्टोरी की बात करते हैं तो पाकिस्तान की एनर्जी स्टोरी स्टार्ट हुई जब मल्टीपल आवर्स की लोड शेडिंग थी यहाँ पे। देन गवर्नमेंट डिसाइडेड टू डू सम आईपीपी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स एंड वी इंक्रीज ओवर जनरेशन टू सेवरल थाउजेंड मेगावाट आवर्स। तो फाइनली वी हेयर सम वर्ड्स कि पाकिस्तान हैज सरप्लस इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एंड येट now in these summer days we are still facing electricity shortage and load shedding in our city areas even. So इस सब को देखते हुए the need of for our people, the need of our commercial sector and the need of our industries, we all need reliability in our systems. And seeing this solar rush happening in Pakistan, जिसको वर्ल्ड वाइड जो है रिकॉग्नाइज भी किया जा रहा है, इस सारे सोलर रश के अंदर हाउ कैन वी पुट इन द रिलायबिलिटी फैक्टर। इस सवाल के जवाब के लिए हम लोग आज यहाँ पे इकट्ठा हुए हैं। आई एम हेयर टू प्रेजेंट एंड द टुडेज एपिसोड नेम इज फ्रॉम सोलर रश टू स्टोरेज मस्ट बेसिस पाकिस्तान एनर्जी इम्पेरेटिव। सो आज के इस टॉपिक पे बात करने के लिए द फर्स्ट मैन दैट केम इनटू माय माइंड is our today's guest. His working includes uh, a lot of research to ensure how can Pakistan sustain this solar rush and how can we move towards a better and greener tomorrow. So we have Mr. Mohammad Hassan Dajana with us today. Hello Hassan, कैसे हैं आप?
Hello, Adil. I'm having a great day. Thank you so much for asking.
थैंक यू सो मच हसान। थैंक यू सो मच। सबसे पहले आप अवेलेबल आपने अपनी अवेलेबिलिटी दिखाई फॉर द शो और आप हमेशा की तरह से अपना स्माइलिंग फेस ले गए। यू इंस्पायर्ड अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल जो कि अभी नए हैं एनर्जी सेक्टर में and जो वर्क कर रहे हैं। सो आप आपके करंट रोल को देखते हुए ही एज इंडस्ट्री लाइसेंस एट रिन्यूएबल्स फर्स्ट, मैं आपसे जो डिस्कशन को स्टार्ट करने के लिए जो पहली चीज़ है, जब डेफिनेटली आप काफ़ी कंपनीज के साथ, सोलर कंपनीज के साथ, इंस्टॉलर मैन्युफैक्चरर्स के साथ इन लिंक होंगे। सो जो पहली चीज़ आप लोग जब कंपनी से मिलते हैं, व्हाट देयर पर्सपेक्टिव इज अबाउट रिलायबिलिटी और क्या उनका ओपिनियन है ऑन दैट हाउ कैन दे सस्टेन दिस सोलर मोमेंटम।
First of all, thank you so much, Adil, for having me. I think I'm going to start off with a little anecdote. I think I was at my home yesterday, and when I entered after a very long day, the first brochure that I saw was of DSG Energy promoting its services across nation. That made me really happy, and we really look forward to this conversation. So, thank you everybody for listening in. My name is Mohammad Hassan Dajana. I work as an industry liaison at Renewables First. Renewables First is our energy and climate think and do tank. So, the do part is very important. And as you ask what's happening in the industry, my role involves a lot of that conversation within the Pakistan's. Uh, uh, my work revolves around ensuring that what's happening in the industry is reflecting within the policy and conversational sectors. So to answer your specific question of what the industry looks at it, so there's two elements of it. For whenever the private sector invests in anything, is the rate of investment, rate of return of that investment, and the second of all the changing trends. So over the past half decade, we've seen the electricity tariff rise, and with the zero rate tax regime that we had for solar, there was a lot of incentive to bring those resources in that we've seen. So when I talk to these industries, these manufacturers, that folks, the French at the Pakistan Solar Association, there's a lot of positive momentum built up on that rush. The second thing we move on towards is on the storage side, is on the battery side. So they know a rush is coming. A rush is already happening. It's not coming, it's here. And to build further on that, we are having a conference next month on solar storage flexibility that talks on the exact same thing. So when what I hear from the industry is a lot of momentum, a lot of positive momentum, but they want but they're very forthright and proactive in a sense that the batteries that come in externally from externally into Pakistan. They need to be vetted, and there need to be quality standards in it. And the EDB and the Pakistan Energy Council, alongside the partners at the Ministry of Industries Production and PS, is doing a really good job to set those pace. So there is momentum, there is appetite, there is fiscal space, there is an economic sense, and there's a conversation to be had. And there's so many stakeholders are playing their part, so there is positive optimism in it. How do you convert that positive optimism into tangible goals? That's where the industry to policy linkage comes in which the Pakistan Solar Association partners that I work extensively within the industry, they've been actively putting in that policy recommendations to the Ministry of Industry Production, who've been very receptive to listen to that, alongside the EDB, to ensure that the needs of the industry aligns with the needs of the government and the people, and together we could capitalize on that rush, so it's not a burden. We don't go towards the utility death spiral, we add it as an asset to our grid. So I'll be happy to follow up to any questions you might have on that. Yeah.
very broadly and very अच्छा एक overwhelming सा आपने मुझे जो introduction दिया about the industry and what the actual working going on best at government level and at their linkage. So considering the recent prosumer regulation that NEPRA has launched of 2025, हमने उसमें देखा है the net metering to net billing का एक shift देखने को मिला है, and renewables first की भी एक working थी जहाँ पे they predict that 80 to 90% of solar users of residential sector they will shift towards batteries due to this policy shift. So अगर मैं इसी को अगर industrial sector या commercial sector पे देखूं, the reliability is still concerned at if a company, if a commercial building is still dependent on the grid. So for them, batteries are still expensive, considered
Hmm.
expensive in Pakistan's market. So आप कैसे देखते हैं कि how can they contribute to this transition and how can they achieve reliability और उनका क्या अभी first step होना चाहिए to move towards this?
Fantastic question, Adil. I think the topic that you're looking for is flexibility in terms of these
Hmm.
changing dynamics. So the our grid has evolved over time from relying on legacy power systems to this new ecosystem, in which how do you manage it? So on a private sector level, the thought process is, how could I maximize my output out without by minimizing my OPEX or my CAPEX, my capital expenditure on my running of business and my operational expense to ensure the product that I've done. So the grid, because of these fluctuations, the on the grid side, that the policymakers are trying to indicate how could we have that flexibility within it, in which, as you mentioned, Renewables First does a lot of research in. One of our research that recently came out was 96% of that transition was financed by people themselves. When you talk about consumer and industrial side of things, there's two things. There's the economic sense of it, how much capex in the initial stage could be invested, and what's the rate of return on it. So we want more electricity consumption. We want the because an electricity consuming country is a country that's progressive, that progresses, but we cannot move out of the grid as well. So we cannot move to our own systems, or we cannot totally be reliant on grid. We need to come to a mutual consensus that benefits the grid as well as the inculcation of the renewables. In that sense, the government has tried to incentivize utilization, and there have been these different proposals in terms of time of use tariffs, in terms of incentivizing further utilization of that grid to minimize the tariff use. So there's a lot of it happening. For the private sector engagement, there's been some installation of it. If you look at Rion Energy, they've created their whole battery energy storage systems. I was looking at a few couple of 430 kilowatt hour battery storage systems at MCC, and there was another intervention of 3.5 megawatts. So there is incentivized to have that battery storage system, but there's a larger conversation to be had in terms of flexibility, in terms of the grid operations, that consumer and industrial operations, in which I think NAPRA has taken a good lead in operationalizing CTBCM to create another opening an avenue of that. There's a lot of energy resources, as you rightly pointed out. If we have so much energy, why does in this 44 degrees centigrade we still have load shedding? It's the management of that energy resources in an efficient manner, alongside the regulator, the distributor, the transmitter, and the utilizer, whether it's on the industry and commercial side of things. Do you have a perfect answer for it? No. That's exactly the conference that we're having next month aims to bring those private sector players, those consumer and industrial players, the regulators and global leaders who've solved this problem of flexibility to come together and chart out a map for Pakistan, so that this current predicament that we are in, we find a solution that is mutually beneficial for everyone involved. Yes, sir.
like as you mentioned कि we have to come up on a mutual understanding or एक mutual part पे आना पड़ेगा that how can we achieve. Obviously the private sector or the commercial sector, nobody can leave grid completely, or ना ही grid can sustain without these consumers and then these large consumers of it. So is there any working going on at grid level best, or grid level पर storage पे कोई बात चल रही है, and we can see some tenders coming out by the government sector that yes, yes we are installing best in grid level. So is there any related working going on?
I think there's a lot of interesting work on the BESS and battery side of things. I think if you look at the work done by Engineer Fazani Lisha and his team at the ministry as is a work as an energy advisor, they've charted out the current existing ecosystem of where we're at. They have charted out exactly what we need to do moving forward, and they've been very active contributors of this conversation within the ecosystem to chart out. Okay, this is what it's the need of it. So, but when they look at the ministry, they look at what's the existing trends of change are, where the wind is going forward, and then they mapped out, okay, exactly how does it look like for us to integrate these resources within our planning. So there's a lot of thought process on it. Operationally, it will evolve with time, and I was just made aware that the Pakistan Solar Association is doing a large conference in Lahore next month, and on the second day of the conference there's a whole segment of it in which the ministry is being involved with the industry to see best practice, how would BESS operate. And there's two very interesting things that are there, that have been discussed during that conference. One is the BESS on that level and scale, and a big question that comes in. Okay, we want BESS, but you want to know where would you inculcate or place that back. So BESS siting is another question that comes in, that in which colleagues of the Pakistan Solar Association is doing a study, so that if the government has an appetite, if the government and the regulator and the decision maker have an appetite, they can go to the industry and they can see, okay, we need to incorporate that, but where would it be situated, how would it be financed, and what would the mechanisms of its distribution look like. So there's work going on that, and from the industry side
Okay.
the government has shown appetite, so there's movement in it. Yeah, Adi.
Yeah, it's good to hear कि there's some movement in it. uh, Definitely इसकी locations और ये सारी चीज़ें काफ़ी matter करती हैं when we are talking about the best at grid level. For private sector, if there is an industrialist and big commercial sector running person, उसको हम अगर best समझाना चाह रहे हैं in very simple words, that what are their use case scenarios, because best needs a massive investment, अच्छी खासी
Mm-hmm.
investment है. तो उनके लिए जो बेनिफिट्स हैं, मैं चाहता हूँ आप उस पर थोड़ी सी बात करें कि what are use case scenarios for them, like they can use it
Mm-hmm.
for peak shaving, they can uh,
Mm-hmm.
this will definitely help the grid also. Okay, अगर the large consumers are working to peak shave their load, there is a two-way profit for them. So these cases, can you talk about?
Uh, Fantastic, a real great question. I think on when we talk about the grid and the power sector and the renewables, it's a double-edged sword. Renewables are
Mm.
great. They're considered green sources of energy. It's the sun, like there's no emissions on it. But there's a caveat towards it. What happens when the sun goes down? Then you have something called a big spike in which you need power, and that power has to come from somewhere that's not reliant on sun. For that, we have RLOs, we have LNGs, or we have coal or oil power plants, and it's not like you just plug in and something turns on. For some, the operation time is a little longer, some open a little quicker. So that transition is a very expensive transition. Think of it on a larger grid level. For a private business and enterprise, if they incorporate BESS at a scale of their industry, they could save a lot of resources of their own expenditure. For example, if a private enterprise runs from 8 a.m. to say 8 p.m., right? So from the 8 a.m. to say 5 6 p.m., if they're having a lot of solar, they're building a lot of that ecosystem, the net billing process. So they could benefit from what solar has to offer. But they still need power post 5 p.m., right? If their operations are reliant on the post sun hours, batteries help them transition towards their system in a more efficient way. That an initial capex is a little higher, but their operational cost decreases over time, which increases the rate of return based on their investment. So that's the value case for them. But it's a double-edged sword. A grid operates in a manner that there's a fixed base load cost for that grid, and then the operation and capex cost is on top of it. If a large consumer moves out of it, then that cost is divided on the other consumers. So it's a dichotomy. That's the challenge of the whole energy sector. Do private enterprise businesses incentivize their own operational expenses and cost and invest in these large systems and move away from the grid? And if they do, what happens to the grid and its base load score? So that's where a big consensus needs to be built. So there's a lot of interest and incentive on both the private side to fix this and on the government side to incentivize their own usage. But for a private business looking into it, the decision is a grid matrix. A grid matrix being the cost of this investment and the value of return of investment in terms of fiscal terms. At the short term, it's a huge capex cost, as you mentioned. There's a lot of money needs to be invested. But on the longer term, if you look at the grid tariff structure, it is going to pay dividends. On the other side, for the government, they could incentivize. They want more energy consumption within the country, and that's where the tariff use structure, the different tariff structure, are being looked into as a means to incentivize the industry. So it's just a tough question. It's just a tough nut to crack. If it would have been solved, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I see in the industry is as appetite and interest, and within the regulator and the government appetite to solve something. So hopefully, when these two merge, we'll have a positive outcome. Yes, sir.
Definitely, we will have and we all are hopeful that there is some positive output out of these discussions. For adding on to this conversation, if there is an industrialist, there is a commercial building, and enterprise owner is seeing this webinar right now, uh, we can install best in our premises, and what we can do is the peak solar hours that we generally net build or net metered out into the grid, we can store these units of electricity and हम इन्हें use कर सकते हैं during the evening hours जब हमारे पास grid expensive है, the peak rate and the tariff rate is higher during these hours. So
Yeah,
by these simple shifting, and we technically named it as peak shaving, we can save some money. And even though the BESS has a larger capex right now, but these and similar to these use case scenarios can save a lot of money for a private sector owner or for an industry who has a surplus solar electricity right now. So
exactly. And like on the technology front, technology costs are always decreasing. So a lot of this best relies on what the technology that the Chinese are developing. The Chinese are developing at a very fast, rapid pace because they've incentivized these whole areas within China that are just focusing on specific technologies, and with the passage of time, their per unit cost decreases over time. So what might be expensive today might become cheaper tomorrow. And if you're able to set up a battery policy that is very forward-looking, that incentivizes that local production, that then we can have our cake and eat it too, in which we can have Chinese technology as joint ventures, through which we could leverage our best practices in terms of that technology coming in, and spur our own environment, spur our own ecosystem. So the potential is out there, and if a private sector investor is looking at it, that joint venture within that best ecosystem, they could create that JV, create an economic opportunity for them, leverage that to build a best within their ecosystem, and then the other private sector could learn from their investment and then have it installed in their capacities as well. It's spurring the economy, making the economic gains, and then localizing that investment that was going as an export entity is now being locally run and stuff. So lots of potential out there.
definitely. जैसे भी आपने चाइनीज टेक्नोलॉजी की बात की, वी हैव one of the state of art supply chain between Pakistan and China for solar power development, or we have seen multiple pathways and some excellent one of its kind import from China for solar panels and related accessories for it. Can we see in future the similar टेक्नोलॉजी शिफ्ट फॉर बेस्ट आल्सो, लाइक जैसे भी पाकिस्तान के लिए हम भी imported multiple solar power from there. We just put our solar power plant here. I recently go through the while scrolling LinkedIn, I see there is a discussion going on the local manufacturing of batteries in Pakistan, and instead of just importing the final product, we can import the technology and knowledge shift between China and Pakistan. Is there any possibility of such manufacturing facility, or is there any possibility to fast track this supply chain management and supply chain path between Pakistan and China? How you see this work flying?
I think the Pakistan and Chinese are very good economic partners. I think the favored trade agreement between them as well. I was there. The Pakistan China Business Forum does a really good job of facilitating that trade. On the battery storage side, the the Prime Minister office was very keen on and building that policy, and within that, the Ministry of Industries Production, the Pakistan Solar Association, and our colleagues that work on that localization put a lot of forward-looking in perspectives in that, and they are with the Prime Minister's office in terms of what that battery policy could look like. And there have been much different discussions around. There have been a lot of discussions around what could we do to incentivize both, right? How could we have those battery best systems here, and then financially incentivize. So the conversation, it's still in tertiary phases. So the consultation, we had consultation with battery manufacturer supply chain people. So get people who were mining the materials that were used in the batteries. There were people that were setting up their own plants of assembly units in Pakistan. There were people that were importing them, and there were people them who were using it in their own products, whether it was on the best side or as within the two-wheelers or three-wheeler industry. So the key consensus was there is appetite and space for it, but there needs to be a uniformity of policy for them to learn and build on it. So the signals that I was hearing, it's still in its tertiary phases, was that if it's a complete unit, then it should not be incentivized. If it's different unique cells, may not current incentivize on the tax regime and on the import side. If you set up these space within Pakistan, you get some benefits, tax benefits, but they're very time constrained. So in order to spur the economy, the rates of importing of the whole unit or specific cells, there's a percentage of it. But if you're able to set them up here, then you don't have to pay that additional price, and you have some incentive in the short term. But those short term are then staggered, and then over a period of time, those incentives decrease. And with a specific time, those staggered decrease, so that at a when the industry matures within 1 to 2 years, then it's the industry has been allowed to mature. Then the import and the local manufacturing, it's the best product that wins. So you're
Yeah.
not shielding, you're not incentivizing a local solution that's not at a higher quality. You are spurring, you're giving that opportunity for the industry to thrive. If they're able to capitalize on it, yes. But if we don't see it happening, then if the import is of a higher quality and lower cost, then the consumer has that option. The consumer has its sense. The consumer is not being bound by it's like a positive, it's like a competitive policy, not a shielding policy. Is the signals that I hear. It's still in progress, and we'll hopefully hear more as the Prime Minister and the relevant stakeholders talk on it, and when it goes public. But these are just my random thoughts on based on the signals I've heard from the industry. Yeah.
Definitely, जैसे in 2017 when the solar just beginning its path and rush in Pakistan's market, we have 0%
Yeah.
zero and tax exemptions on solar. So we have seen a recognizable and excellent solar growth in Pakistan, and people are talking about worldwide about it. So we are hoping that this there's similar working from government and support in taxation as Pakistan. Currently, BESS has almost 48% of its value. The
Yeah.
taxes are on it and the duty values are. So, if there is something incentives on it from government side that are extremely acknowledgeable, and we all are hoping on it. So,
Yeah.
कंसिडरिंग द लोकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हम लोगों ने सप्लाई चेन पे बात की फाइनेंसिंग मॉडल मैं चाहता हूँ अगर इफ अ प्राइवेट सेक्टर or a local industry, a small industry want to switch to energy storage and want to install some batteries along with its solar power plant, is there any financing model available,
Hmm.
Hassan?
I think that's a great question. Exactly something that we're working on. So if you look up what the Clean Energy Finance Innovation Lab does, CFIL is what we've termed it. You know, money goes. Our concept and relation with money is you need to put it in a safe investment in which we can guarantee a safe return. Uh, so a lot of the public sector financing from Pakistan's private bank goes to governmental bonds or governmental guarantees, and the government borrows and gives a guarantee that you will have this percentage as return, which is if you were to give me that deal, I'll take it with both hands. But when you look at these investments, these are a little trickier investments. these are trickier because their rate of return is demanded by market forces. There's a lot of due diligence involved. So when you have these two options, in which there's a fixed return expected, then there's where a lot of funding financing goes. And if you look at the core financing study that we recently did at the energy finance team at Renewables First did was we mapped out where's the money going, and we looked at like 96% of the solar rush was incentivized, was done by people with their own hard saved money, and the institutional funding was very minimal. But how could you tap into that money? If money if you are able to build a product that is incentivizable, on which it is de-risked, in which there's a imagine there's a cover on top of it. For example, Pakistan recently tapped into the Chinese bond market, the panda bond market, in which Pakistan's credit rating was not as high, but we got a guarantee from the AIB and AAIB that took our credit rating to A plus, and it was oversubscribed by 5 times. It is something similar of that sort that de-risks that financial instruments, that brings on these financial resources that incentivize that investment within it. So the CFL does a job of it, of creating that space, and then it's building something called the PFN network, the Pakistan Energy Finance Network, to build these pathways, and these pathways are built alongside these financial institutions, in which this appetite exists, there's a need for it that exists, but there are bottlenecks within it due to which it's being hampered. So that CFIL, the Climate Energy Finance Innovation Lab, aims to mitigate that gap. That core financing study was the first part of it. CFIL launched at the London Climate Action Week recently, and the next step would be the operationalizing of the PEFN network to create these financing ecosystems and models through which these partners could tap into it and utilize this resource towards that investment. It's a tough ask. It's a tough ask if there's been an established way of business, and you're telling something new to be done. That's going to take some time. It's going to take some stakeholder mapping. It's going to take some resource building. But that's something that our energy finance team is actively building. And you should follow what the work of CFL, the Clean Energy Finance Innovation Lab at Renewables First, and the work that's been done at PEFN, the Pakistan Energy Finance Network.
Definitely there it needs some time to be done, but the good news is for the industrial and commercial sector is that currently the best still has the payback period
Yeah.
in between 4 to 6 years, so it's
Mm.
not really bad considering the latest LFP cells and latest best
Mm.
technology that currently available in Pakistan through Chinese manufacturers like Huawei and Sungrow. So the technology that exists in Pakistan have a lifetime of almost 15 years, 10 years, even 20 years if one cycle per day is considered. So we can expect the ROI in 4 to
Mm.
6 years. So it is a good investment still in this
Yeah.
period of time for
Yeah.
commercial and industrial sector specifically. Hassan, to conclude today's episode, I want you to just tell us about some case studies. If the CNI sector of Pakistan want to learn about how the storage sector is integrated with their solar power plants at large scale for some country. I heard about Germany. They installed a
Mm.
large energy storage at their grid level. So, is there any similar case study that we can look up into?
I think there's a lot of work being done globally. I think if you look at, I think if I was just talking with Mr. John Grams. Mr. John Grams used to lead the Smart Energy Council in Australia. I think he built an ecosystem that really incentivized that best ecosystem, and it really had an enormous. I was talking with him, and the numbers were just humongous. It was like megawatts of BESS across the whole ecosystem, billions of US dollars capitalized. So Australian example is one example, and it's a privilege for us that Mr. John Gams would be joining us next month at the Solar Storage Flexibility Conference. So there's so many examples, but I really would want you to look at the example of Australia. And if you really want to, you talk about capital rights. I just remembered that at the conference next month, we have a whole session on mobilizing capital for storage, solar storage, and flexibility that aims to answer the same question with global financiers present in the audience, telling them, okay, global financiers and Pakistani financiers with the whole within both in the room as well as in the audience, telling us what we finance, at what terms do we finance, and what terms we need to agree on for that financing to work. So these are fantastic questions. These are exactly the direction the industry, the whole sector is headed to, with private and public sector engagements. So the Solar Storage Flexibility Conference that's happening on the next month on 4th and 5th of August, co-organized by the Pakistan Solar Association, Renewables First, and Global Solar Council, aims to tackle all of these questions from what does it mean on the planning side, on the regulation side, on the social consumerism side, on tech transfer, and around the engagement done globally, such as the 300 global solar campaign. And one thing we didn't touch about was virtual power plants, on which there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of appetite both on the government level, and it all needs to be financed somehow. All of these are specific sections that we cover with global expertise, local in stakeholders, local experts, local decision makers, all in the room deciding that future. So I really hope your audience member and you particularly and the audience members join us for this conversation next month that really aims to
Definitely,
rethink our approach towards what we have to do. Adil, I hope you answered your question. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Hassan. I hope and inshallah there will be some answers there. And you also put up my perspective there and to answer some of my question. I will definitely join virtually if there is some possibility. Let's conclude today's our episode. Uh, I think that's all for today. We have discussed how can we bring in battery energy storage system into Pakistan, how where the local manufacturing supply chains stands, and what is energy sector energy storage future for Pakistan's commercial and industrial sector. What are the financial numbers and what financial opportunities and what profitable opportunities are available for CNH sector Pakistan. Thank you, Hassan, for your time. Uh, that's all for
Have
today.
a very- Thank you so much, everybody. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz. So this is our episode for today. If you have any further question related to battery energy storage system, and if you are a business owner or an industrialist want to know about what battery energy storage system is and how can we uh, put it into your energy case scenarios and what are the use case scenarios for yourself, you can just drop a comment down below or reach out to my LinkedIn at Adil Tariq. So that's all for today. For the next episode, um, we will be there at next Saturday at 4 p.m. with another topic to talk about how can we make tomorrow more greener and more sustainable. Thank you so much.